Retail is a brilliantly meritocratic industry, and one where people, whoever they are, whatever their background, have really been able to progress their careers and achieve their dreams. Our concern, and why we're launching the No Limit Social Mobility campaign, is that the pandemic has really served to separate even further the haves and have-nots, and the fragile ground upon which diversity is based has really been exposed. We need high-profile people to be involved in this debate. So we've gathered together some brilliant leaders from different backgrounds throughout the sector to show just how much a career in retail has meant for them, and just how much every leader today, not just those working in HR, but every leader in UK business, needs to be assessing their culture and looking at new ways to drive social mobility in their organisations.
I would say I fell into retail. I turned up one day at Estee Lauder. It was a part-time job, and for me from there I was very fortunate to be surrounded by a team of people who helped me progress throughout my career. I would say the life-changing moment for me was when a brand who were very London-centric brand were expanding, and they came and they opened in Glasgow, and through a friend of a friend at the time, which is how you got jobs in pretty much most of the time then, because we weren't in the digital world that we're in now. I got recommended to move to a new brand. It was very exciting, it was quite challenging. And from there, it really has opened doors for me along the way, and it's very much been about building relationships and building connections and really stretching myself to the next level.
So I was living in a council flat in a not very nice part of Manchester with 2 very young children and was a single mum. So at that point, my life and sort of my friends' lives went in 2 very different directions. I think realised that I really needed to do something quite different, and I wanted to be a really good mum and provide for my children. So I got a job at the Co-op, and I worked 2 days a week at the Co-op doing filing. And one of the jobs that I was given at the Co-op was to look after the graduate trainees and make sure that they sort of knew how the business ran and where everything was. And I didn't really know what a graduate trainee was at that point in time. But after I spent some time with them, I realised that I thought, I'm probably just as good as you guys. I think I can do things in the same way that you can. But of course, they had something that I didn't have, which was a degree. So I knew then that I needed to get a degree, and I enrolled at Manchester Metropolitan University. IT was the big thing at that point in time, so I did an IT degree there, and that enabled me to get access to the sort of graduate job that I really, really wanted.
I grew up on a council estate in Liverpool, and my father only worked intermittently. He'd been very seriously invalided in the Second World War. My mum was a part-time nurse, so we didn't have a business background, and I was a great beneficiary of a free and very good Catholic education at the local grammar school, and then the beneficiary of a very good and supportive employer in the Co-op, which introduced me into the retailing profession. It's one of the great things about the retail industry, how it welcomes people in, irrespective of their background.
Social mobility really matters to organisations and should matter to all of us, because we have to sort of level the playing field in the boardroom and in organisations generally.
Social mobility matters terribly. It's one of the most fundamental examples of free society, of justice, that it doesn't matter the circumstances that you're born into, everybody should have the same opportunity.
What we must be concerned about is the best, the brightest, the most talented rise to the right level within any society or culture. If we want the best school teachers, if we want the best accountants, if we want the best business leaders, if we want the best leaders in our armed forces, then that should be based on merit. And that merit should come from people who are capable, no matter what their background is. So if we exclude people because they haven't been born into a certain place or a certain title, then no business, society or country can achieve its best.
Well, I think social mobility matters because everybody deserves an opportunity. Talent is evenly distributed and opportunity is not. And I think retail is so well positioned because you can start at the real basement of retail. You know, I started in a warehouse, you know, that was my career. I wasn't great at school and I worked my way through. I was a rep on the road, I went selling kitchens. I didn't need any qualifications for what I did.
The retail industry is really important in promoting social mobility. Today, as much as it was sort of 25 years ago when I started out in the industry. The retail businesses are not all based in London. They are geographically spread, whether that's digitally or physically. And so there are lots of opportunities across the UK for people to really embrace the retail sector and start their careers. It's a fantastic place to start. And there's also a huge diversity of roles within the retail industry, whether it's that you are fascinated by digital, whether you want to spend time in front of people. There's a huge number of roles that will play to pretty much everybody's strengths.
I think the retail industry is enormously important in contributing to social mobility in this country. In fact, it's been one of the great engines of social mobility, simply because retailers are in every town, they're in every community, they're the local employer. And irrespective of your background, you can go and get a job in the local retailer.
I would say there's no difference now from the past in terms of the ability of retail to identify talent and to want to nurture and promote that talent, irrespective of background.
I never really imagined that I would run Tesco when I entered the retail industry, but nor did I think that it could never be for me. And that's what social mobility is all about, that whoever you are, whatever your background or your circumstances, wherever you start from, you feel that you've as good a chance as anybody else. That's the key thing.
I think retail is still a fantastic place for people to start their career. And I think there are clearly less roles on the high street than there were when I started my career, but there are still lots of roles within retail, whether that's in the digital space, supply chain, fulfillment.
I think for someone starting on the shop floor today, I do think the same opportunities can be there. The person needs to want those opportunities in the first place. I believe that with agile working, and most companies now have agile working, that once you move from the shop floor into office roles or field roles, that you can, you know, whether you're a mum, whether you're a dad, you can do the school run, you definitely have got opportunities.
I think the new wave of digital businesses present a whole different array of opportunities for people. And in terms of sort of working their way up the value chain, I think they start higher up the value chain. And as a business, we're looking at all sorts of things like software, robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And one of the things that I always talk to our people about is this isn't about replacing people with machines per se, which is the sort of stereotypical way of thinking about it. This is about where you do repetitive things or where you do mundane tasks. I want you to use your brain a lot more than you use your hands tapping keyboards. I want you to be thinking more. I want to move you up the value chain, and as I move you up the value chain, I can pay you more and you can have a bigger impact.
I hope that as things become more digital, we don't jeopardise our ability as a retail sector to embrace people who have come from less privileged backgrounds. I think it's still really important that we bring them into the sector. I think we've got to be very mindful of the fact that things are changing, and with that change it might become more challenging to bring people from certain backgrounds into our sector. But as a sector, we have got a responsibility to make sure that we are finding talent irrespective of background and still bringing them into our businesses.
To improve social mobility in retail now, I do believe that the government, politicians, everyone in business that has a voice should definitely, we should really push through further for the real living wage across all areas in the UK. In terms of commerciality, it is tough on the bottom line, but ultimately it does reward your employees, it makes them more connected, it gives people a chance to really get into the workplace.
We used to have a saying at Tesco, everyone is welcome at Tesco. Principally it was looking at customers, but it also applied to working there. And that's the key. You know, you'll do well in an organisation if you think it's for you.
So I've always felt that the job of a manager, I always felt that my job in Waitrose and John Lewis was nurturing the people that worked for me. I served them, they didn't serve me. I was constantly thinking about, what does this individual need to do their job better? What more support do they need from me? What more career development do they need? And by feeding everybody in that way, people would grow at different rates. And when people saw that you genuinely had their best interest at heart, they would give more, and they would be more honest with you about whether they are at the right level. So always being alive to somebody's hunger and ambition, always being alive to the real benefits that an individual might bring to an organisation, and then looking to enhance them, is hugely important. And if you do that, you are promoting social mobility,